You should give a toast. That's what someone said. I don't even remember who. I was already 2 drinks deep, sitting at a table meant for leftovers. The groomsman's weird cousin, some toddler with spaghetti hands, and me. The brother of the bride. Apparently not important enough for anyone to remember I raised her. I didn't give a toast. Because right as the groom was raising his glass, I unlocked my wife's phone. She left it on her chair when she went to help Janie with her dress. Janie didn't need help. I could see her from where I sat, giggling with her new in-laws at the head table. Macy had just forgotten the phone. Or maybe she didn't think I'd look. Maybe she'd grown too confident. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't. I swear. I just needed a distraction from feeling like I didn't exist at my own sister's wedding. So I picked it up. I tapped the screen, and I saw the notification. Camera with flash. Can't wait to taste you again after the first dance, smiling face with horns. No name. Just a number. No lock screen, either. I guess when you don't think your husband matters, you don't bother setting passwords. My fingers moved before I could stop them. Messages. Threads. Voice notes. Photos. And there it was. A mirror selfie. In this same hotel. In this same dress. Sent to a contact saved as Russ Scissors. I nearly dropped the phone. Russ. There was only one Russ here tonight. Russell Prescott. My sister's new husband. I must have been completely still for 3 full minutes. The world around me moved in slow motion. Clinking silverware, laughter, the DJ testing the mic. My wife and my sister's husband? This couldn't be real. But it was. Because the next message from Macy read, "It's ironic, isn't it? I married the fixer while dreaming about the prince." Face blowing a kiss. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But I do now. God, I do. And it gets worse. So much worse. Because the last message I opened before Macy walked back to the table was from over a year ago. "You sure he won't find out?" And Russ had replied, "He's too busy playing dad to notice." That's when I realized something horrifying. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't recent. It wasn't even about lust. It was planned. I didn't stand up right away. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't cause a scene. Not yet. That's not who I am. I was never the guy who makes noise. I was always the guy who picks up the pieces, makes excuses for others, fixes what breaks, even when I didn't break it. I guess that's what Macy meant when she called me the fixer. And in that moment, I hated that she was right. She came back to the table smiling. That fake, overly sweet Macy smile that made strangers think she was angelic. She touched my shoulder like nothing happened and asked if I wanted more wine. I nodded. My mouth couldn't form words. My hands were under the table, clenched around her phone like it might detonate. I didn't want to ruin Janie's wedding. That's what I kept telling myself. This day was supposed to be hers, her fairy tale ending. And maybe for 5 more minutes, I could pretend none of this was real. Maybe I could spare her one more moment of happiness before I dropped the curtain on her entire fantasy. The DJ's voice crackled through the speakers. "Let's welcome to the mic, the father of the groom, Mr. Vincent Prescott." Applause. Cheers. The clinking of glasses. I sat frozen, barely hearing any of it until he started talking. His voice was exactly what you'd expect, smug, rehearsed, and soaked in country club entitlement. "Tonight," he said, raising his glass, "my son, my brilliant son, has married a girl from humble beginnings. But let's be honest, fairy tales don't always start in castles, do they?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. I looked at Janie. She laughed too, nervously. She always laughed when she was uncomfortable. Vincent went on. "She was raised by her brother. No parents, no wealth, no foundation. But she turned out all right, didn't she, folks?" More laughter. She was lucky to have a brother so loyal, so quiet, so content to stay in the background. My eyes narrowed. And now, with Russell in her life, she has real family. A real legacy. That was it. That was the moment. I stood up slowly, like every inch of my spine had to make the decision with me. I heard Macy whisper, "What are you doing?" But I didn't answer. I walked toward the mic, each step heavier than the last. No one tried to stop me. Maybe they thought I was going to say something sweet. Maybe they assumed I was finally going to give a toast. Vincent turned toward me with a smirk. "Ah, the man of the hour," he said, handing me the mic, "the brother, the backbone." I looked out over the room. So many faces. Janie, still smiling, confused. Russell, holding her hand, looking like he was trying not to laugh. Macy, standing halfway out of her chair like she might bolt. And then I spoke. Funny thing about fairy tales, I began, my voice steady. They always have a villain. Sometimes you don't see them right away. Sometimes they wear tuxedos. Sometimes they smile too much. And sometimes they marry your sister. A murmur spread through the crowd. Russell's smile faltered. Macy sat down slowly. I held up the phone. You might want to check with your new husband, Janie. Because this phone doesn't just have my Spotify playlist and pictures of my dog. Dead silence. No, I said. This phone has something else. Something sent to me by accident, or maybe fate. And now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. I can't unknow it. And I won't unsay it. Russell stood up. Hey man, this isn't the time or place. Oh no, I cut him off. This is the perfect place. You brought the cameras. You brought the stage. And you married my sister while texting my wife. Gasps. One woman dropped her glass. Someone cursed under their breath. Janie's face turned to stone. Russell reached for her hand. She pulled it away before he even touched her. I don't care how much money your family has, I said to him, my voice now sharp. I don't care how many clinics your daddy owns. You're not better than me. You're just better at hiding your rot. But today the rot came to the surface. Vincent tried to interrupt, but I stared him down. You said I was loyal, quiet, content to stay in the background. You're right. That's who I've been. But today I'm the narrator of this story. And it's not a fairy tale anymore. I dropped the mic literally, and I walked straight out of the hall. But that wasn't the end. Because 10 minutes later, Macy followed me to the parking lot, crying. And what she confessed there, it blew the top off everything I thought I knew. The night air hit me like a slap. Not cold, just jarring. The kind of air that makes you suddenly aware of how fast your heart is beating. I didn't stop walking until I hit the far end of the lot, where the grass met gravel and the reception music became muffled enough to feel like someone else's celebration. I leaned against my beat-up Corolla, a car Macy said we'd upgrade when things felt more adult, and I waited. I wasn't sure for what. Maybe for the shame to wear off. Maybe for someone to come out and punch me. Maybe for Janie to cry or scream or hate me. But none of that happened. Instead, I heard the sound of heels, fast, frantic, scraping against concrete. And then her voice. Howard, wait, please. I turned slowly. Macy was in her green satin dress, clutching her purse like it was a shield. Her makeup was still perfect, but her face was wrong, stiff, twitchy, like the panic hadn't caught up with the rest of her yet. She didn't say anything for a moment. Just stood there, breathing like she'd run a marathon. I didn't speak either. I wanted to hear her words, not offer her mine. Okay, she finally said. I can explain. But you have to let me talk before you blow this up any more than you already have. I laughed. Loud, bitter, sudden. I blew this up? Are you seriously saying I ruined the wedding by exposing you and my sister's husband? Her eyes darted toward the reception hall, as if someone might be following. It's not what you think. That line, that cliché, that insult dressed as a defense. I shook my head and unlocked the car, ready to get in and leave her standing there. Howard, please, she said again, softer this time. It didn't start with him. That stopped me. What? She looked down at the pavement, and when she looked back up at me, something in her eyes had changed. Her lips trembled. It started with you. That was the first hit. Not the hardest, not yet, but it landed. I was lonely, she said. You were always with Janie, always fixing something, always too tired or too practical. You never touched me anymore. You never saw me. I took a step forward. So you cheated on me because I was too good at being a brother? She didn't answer. I stared at her, feeling a numbness start to spread inside me, like my entire nervous system had decided to shut off one sense at a time. It started with someone else, she said quietly. Before Russell. You don't know him. A guy from work. But it was short, and I felt guilty. And then you forgave me for snapping at you one night. Remember that? When I forgot our anniversary, you brought me flowers anyway. I remembered. I told myself she was just stressed. I didn't know I was being pitted. I ended it after that, she said, as if that was some kind of medal. But something in me, I don't know. I started resenting you more for being so nice. Like I couldn't breathe. Like I was married to a mirror. You were always reflecting what I lacked. I didn't move. I wanted to speak, but the words were buried under too much disbelief. And then, she continued, Russell just got it. He didn't make me feel like I was being handled. He made me feel like I was wanted. Like I was dangerous again. Dangerous? I asked. Is that what you were chasing, some adrenaline rush while Janie was picking flower arrangements. She took a step toward me. I didn't expect to fall for him. You fell for my sister's fiancé? My voice cracked on the last word. And you thought now was the time to explain that. She folded her arms, suddenly defensive again. What was I supposed to do, Howard? Tell you on Christmas? On her birthday? At brunch with your coworkers? There's never a good time to destroy someone. And yet, I said bitterly, you managed to pick the absolute worst one anyway. We stood there in silence, her breathing faster than mine, the weight of her words hanging between us like a third person we both hated. Then she said the line I'll never forget. He was going to leave her for me. Tonight. After the reception. I stared at her. You're lying. I'm not. We planned it. He said he couldn't go through with the honeymoon. He said I was the real thing. That she was a mistake. Something inside me collapsed. I don't know what part. The husband, the brother, the fixer, the fool. All of it, probably. I sat down on the curb, head in my hands, while Macy just stood there like she'd dropped a match and was waiting to see how fast the fire would spread. Why are you even telling me this? I asked. And she said, because it's not over yet, and you need to know what comes next. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard her right. He was going to leave her tonight? I repeated, slow and quiet, as if saying it out loud would somehow make it more believable or less real. But Macy didn't flinch. She nodded with the kind of hollow certainty that comes from rehearsing something over and over in your head before finally saying it out loud. We had a plan, she said. He told me he was going to take Janie back to the bridal suite after the reception, tell her the truth, and then leave. He said she'd be better off hurt now than living a lie. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because that was the only thing I could do to keep myself from screaming. Better off? He marries her, humiliates her in front of an entire room of people, and then thinks honesty will be some kind of favor? Macy crossed her arms. You don't understand. No, I snapped. I understand perfectly. He wanted to make sure the money cleared first. You think he married her out of love? He married her because she's got access to my parents' estate now. You do remember that Janie turns 25 this week, right? The trust unlocks. That made her blink. She hadn't known. I could see it. All those stolen moments. All those texts. All that scheming. And she didn't even know the most important piece. You're not the only one who feels used, I said. You just happen to enjoy it. She didn't deny it. The silence that followed wasn't like before. It was heavier now. Her face started to crack, but not out of guilt. Out of fear. Something was shifting behind her eyes. She looked away, like she was about to tell me something she hadn't planned to say. He said he was going to make sure she didn't get the money, she finally muttered. That stopped everything. What? He said your sister's mental health record might be enough to contest the inheritance. That if she cracked after the split, the trust would transfer to the closest guardian. You. My jaw tightened. That's not true. That's not how it works. I know that, she said, almost apologetic. But he didn't. Or he didn't care. He just wanted leverage. He said you'd do the rest of the work for him, that your guilt would make you take care of Janie anyway, so the money would still help him in the long run. And there it was. The real betrayal. Not just cheating. Not just lust. Not even love. Greed. They weren't just ruining Janie's life. They were playing chess with mine. With ours. I raised that girl. I put off everything to make sure she had a chance at normal. And this snake in a suit wanted to weaponize her trauma? I stood there trying to process the weight of what she just told me. And Macy, for once, looked like she regretted every second of it. You're not the only victim here, she said softly. I'm not a victim, I replied. Not anymore. Her expression shifted. Then what are you going to do? I looked her dead in the eyes. You'll see. I didn't scream. I didn't punch walls. I didn't collapse into a pile of tears. That part of me, the fixer, the peacekeeper, had finally bled out in that parking lot. What rose in its place was something cold, focused, and done playing the fool. I opened the car door. She grabbed my wrist. Howard, please. Don't tell her. Not yet. Let me talk to Russell first. Let me. I pulled away. No, I said. You've had your time. Your lies. Your fun. Now it's my turn. I started the engine. She stepped back, confused and nervous. She thought she'd poured it all out. She thought this was the final scene. But the real story hadn't even begun. Because when I returned to the venue, I didn't go to Janie. I went straight to the event coordinator. And I asked for the microphone one more time. By the time I walked back into that venue, something in me had already changed. The tension in my chest, the burning behind my eyes, it was gone. What replaced it was something scarier, clarity. Pure, sharp, surgical. The kind of focus I hadn't felt since Janie was little, and I used to sit up all night figuring out how to stretch a $40 grocery budget into a week's worth of meals. That same survival instinct was now calculating something different. How to destroy two people without laying a single finger on them. The music had picked back up. The dance floor was full again, like nothing had happened. I slipped through the crowd like a shadow. No one wanted to look at me, not after what I'd already said in front of everyone. I think most of them assumed I'd left for good. I was fine with that. I didn't need applause. I didn't need anyone's permission. I found the event coordinator behind the side curtain near the bar. Her name was Elise, and I remembered she had complimented my tie earlier, said it matched the linen napkins. I used that. "Hey, Elise," I said, as calmly and politely as I could. "Sorry for the scene earlier. I just wanted to make sure everything was settled." She blinked, cautious. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Better than ever. Listen, would it be possible to play one last video? I know the groomsmen already played that embarrassing bachelor party reel, but I made something for Janie. Something sweet. I uploaded it earlier to the shared folder you sent out." She hesitated. "Does it have any surprises?" I smiled, kind and convincing. "No, just love." She looked at me for a second longer, then relented. "Okay, but after the father-daughter dance, all right?" "Perfect," I said. "Thank you. Really." I slipped her a folded bill, a thank you tip, nothing suspicious, and walked away like a man who just wanted to honor his little sister. But that wasn't the truth. Because the file I had queued up wasn't the slideshow I'd originally planned. That one had pictures of Janie's childhood, of me teaching her to ride a bike, of us eating ice cream after school plays. I'd spent weeks working on it. No, the file I uploaded tonight was fresh. Very fresh. It was a screen recording from Macy's phone, including the messages, the photos, the voice note of Russell saying, "You're the one I should have married." All neatly stitched together into one video with a piano soundtrack underneath. Calm, eerie, hauntingly soft. No commentary. Just evidence. It would play in exactly 12 minutes. And I'd be gone before it finished. I slipped back to the edge of the dance floor. Macy was near the cake table, clearly shaken. She kept looking around for me, her face pale, her dress wrinkled from the walk outside. Russell was off laughing with some friends like nothing had happened, his charm on full display again. He was untouchable. He always had been. But not tonight. I spotted Janie standing near the photo booth, sipping champagne, eyes still sparkling like this was the best night of her life. That image burned in my mind, because I knew it would be the last moment she looked that innocent. For a second, I almost pulled the plug. Almost texted Elise and told her not to play it. Not here. Not like this. But then I remembered Macy's words in the parking lot. He said your guilt would do the rest of the work. That was when I knew they were never going to stop. They would have gutted Janie eventually, with or without me. They were just hoping I'd carry the blade for them and call it mercy. So I stayed quiet. I didn't warn Janie. I just watched the dance. And when the lights dimmed for the video, I slipped out the back door, down the narrow hallway past the kitchen, and into the lot where the catering trucks were parked. My phone buzzed 6 minutes later. First message, "What the hell is this?" From Macy. Second message, "You psychotic loser." From Russell. Third message, no text. Just a photo of Janie on the floor of the ballroom, crying, guests frozen around her like a painting. I didn't reply to any of them. Instead, I drove across town to my storage unit. Because now that the truth was out, it was time to open something I hadn't touched in 11 years. Something my father left me before he died. And inside it was the real end of this story. The storage unit smelled like dust and old plastic, the kind of air that hasn't been disturbed in years. The fluorescent lights above me flickered with that familiar low hum, like they were hesitant to remember how to glow. I hadn't been here since Janie graduated high school, maybe longer. I think part of me kept pretending this place didn't exist. It was a tomb of a different life, a version of myself I'd buried years ago to become the brother she needed. But now, with the wedding in flames and my marriage in ruins, it felt like the only place I could go. I walked to the back corner and pulled aside an old tarp covering a steel trunk. It was heavy, the corners rusted, and the handle nearly broken. I used a small key my father had given me in a manila envelope on my 19th birthday. The instructions had been simple. Don't open unless you need to stop being nice. At the time, I'd laughed. My father was always cryptic, a former systems engineer who'd spent the last decade of his life getting deeper into paranoia, obsessed with data trails and corporate corruption. When he died, I chalked it all up to dementia or guilt. But he wasn't crazy. He was prepared. Inside the box were 3 items: a leather notebook, an old USB stick sealed in a bag marked encrypted A, and a single-page letter written in his neat, blocky handwriting. Howard, if you're reading this, something has changed. You've lived your life quiet. You've lived your life good. But if this moment comes, remember this. The only thing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose is one who finally realizes he never needed anyone's permission to fight back. Use what's in here. Cleanly. Precisely. Without mercy. If you must burn it all down, do it with a steady hand. I reread that letter twice, then slid the USB into the old laptop I kept in the unit. It whirred to life like a sleeping dog reluctantly waking up. The files inside weren't what I expected. There were old PDFs, databases, recordings, all cataloged dirt on companies I'd never heard of. But there was one folder labeled Prescott, and when I clicked into it, I understood exactly why my father had warned me to wait. Russell's father, Vincent Prescott, had not only used dirty money to fund his chain of clinics, but he had covered up 2 malpractice cases and rerouted money from a state-funded medical grant. Names, dates, signatures. My father had everything. And somehow, Russell's name had already started to appear in newer financial filings. Ghost-linked accounts under his name were funneling money from shell entities, all tied to Janie's side of the trust. They weren't just planning to betray her emotionally. They were already laundering her inheritance. I closed the laptop and stared at the concrete floor, letting the weight of it all settle in. Macy hadn't known this. She thought she was part of some tragic affair, a love triangle. She probably believed Russell was going to start a new life with her. They'd ride off into chaos and convince themselves it was destiny. But Russell? He never cared about her. He was using her to distract me, to divide my attention, while he quietly positioned himself to rob my sister blind before the honeymoon ended. I had 2 options now: report everything, or wait and strike in a way that left no way out. I chose both. Before I left the unit, I made 3 calls. The first was to an investigative journalist I'd met at a charity install last year. I fixed her AC pro bono when her landlord ghosted her. The second was to a friend of my dad's who worked in state auditing. The third was to Macy. She didn't answer, but I left a message. Calm. Cold. You were right. It's not over. But it won't end how you think. Then I drove to Janie's apartment, knowing she'd gone there after the reception collapse. I didn't knock right away. I stood outside her door, trying to figure out if this was the moment I told her everything. The money, the lies, the laundering, the fact that Russell never intended to leave with Macy because she was never part of the plan. When I finally knocked, she opened the door looking hollow. Still in her wedding dress, bare feet, makeup smudged, holding a half-eaten carton of wedding cake in one hand and a bottle of red wine in the other. You came to gloat? She asked, voice dry. No, I said, stepping inside. I came to ask if you're ready to hear everything. The real story. Not just about Russell. Not just about Macy. About what they've already taken from you. She stared at me, the question in her eyes obvious. And I answered it by opening my laptop and pressing play. Janie didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't throw the wine bottle or collapse into my arms or do any of the things people imagine happen when someone finds out their new husband and their sister-in-law were cheating and scheming against them for months, maybe years. No, she just sat there, silent and shaking, while the video played on my laptop. Her eyes never left the screen. Even when the voice note popped up, Russell whispering filth into Macy's voicemail. Even then, she didn't blink. Her thumb pressed harder and harder into the side of the wine bottle until I thought the glass might crack, but she didn't speak. Not until the screen went black. And then, she whispered the words I'd been dreading and praying for. I want to end them. There was no rage in her voice. Just ice. Pure, clean ice. Then listen closely, I said, because I've already started. I laid everything out for her. The USB, the files, the Prescott family's hidden money funnel. The way Russell had already used Janie's trust fund to secure a medical investment deal through one of his father's fake holding companies. I showed her the flow of funds, The hidden routing through Belize and Panama and back through Delaware like it was just another day on Wall Street. Janie sat with her elbows on her knees, staring into it all like someone staring into a fire they started by accident. They thought I wouldn't notice, she said softly. They thought I'd smile and host brunches and play the trophy wife while they hollowed me out. They knew exactly who you were, I said. They just thought they could smother her. She nodded slowly, then looked at me. So what now? Now, I said, we use everything they built and tear it down. She leaned back and crossed her arms. Good, because I'm done being the girl who survives. I want to be the girl who ruins careers. For the first time since that night began, I felt something crack open in me that wasn't rage. It was pride. Twisted, bitter, beautiful pride. Not because of revenge, but because Janie had just transformed in front of me. The girl I raised to be soft and kind and patient had found her edge. And it was sharp. We started with the journalist. Her name was Lela Vaughn. She'd called me back less than an hour after I forwarded her the first file. Now, she was asking for statements, evidence, confirmation. I handed the phone to Janie, and she gave it to her straight. Dates, times, documents, and a quiet, stone-cold voice. Next came the call to the state auditor. My dad's old friend, Hal, was a retired compliance officer who'd seen enough fraud to smell it through the phone. When I told him what we had, he asked for two things, the money trail and a copy of the marriage certificate. We sent both. Then we waited. But not for long. Because in the world Russell thought he controlled, money moves fast, but information moves faster. By morning, the Prescott's private clinic network was flagged for audit. Their public-facing site had mysteriously gone offline for maintenance. And someone, not us, leaked a snippet of the audio files to a niche industry blog that had a very personal grudge against Vincent Prescott. By noon, it was trending in medical circles. By 4 p.m., it hit local press. Russell tried to call Janie 13 times. She never answered. Macy tried twice. Then texted, "They're going to blame me. Please, I didn't know about the money." Janie looked at the screen and typed only 2 words. You knew. I stayed with her that night. We didn't talk much. We just watched the chaos unfold. Legal blogs picking up the audit story, Reddit threads speculating on which local medical family had imploded overnight, and a few panic posts from fake accounts trying to call it all a smear campaign. But the best part? The lawyer Janie had hired to help manage her trust, the one Russell had recommended just 2 months ago, had also received an email from the State Financial Crimes Division that morning. Apparently, the paperwork tying Russell's name to the trust for logistical tax purposes had triggered an automatic investigation. He dropped Russell as a client by sunset. The empire was cracking, and it was only going to get louder. But even as I watched the dominoes fall, I kept feeling this heavy weight in my chest. Not because I regretted anything. Not because I thought it was too far. It was because none of this had to happen. I would have protected her. I would have helped Macy. I would have forgiven if they'd only come to me with truth instead of knives. But now I was someone else. Janie wasn't the only one who had changed. And tomorrow, we were going to the one place no one expected us to show our faces. The Prescott family estate. Because before Russell lost everything, he was going to look both of us in the eye and know that he never broke us. He freed us. We didn't make an appointment. We didn't send a warning. We didn't bring a lawyer or a camera or a single page of paperwork. We just showed up, me in my patched gray blazer and Janie in her casual jeans and hoodie, still with fading mascara under her eyes, but standing straighter than I'd ever seen her. The Prescott estate wasn't just a mansion, it was a statement. Tall gates, imported stone, a driveway long enough to make you feel uninvited. Everything about it said, you shouldn't be here. And yet we were. Vincent answered the door himself. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. Unshaven, jaw tight, robe slightly open over a half-buttoned dress shirt like he'd just rolled off a phone call he couldn't win. Russell was there too, standing behind his father, trying to look composed but twitching at the corners like a man whose world was 1 inch from collapse. Macy was nowhere in sight. Don't say a word, Vincent said to Russell when we stepped in. Then he looked at us. You've made your point. Now what do you want? Money? An apology? I looked over at Janie, who gave me a slight nod. I stepped forward, calmly, hands in my pockets. No, I said. We came to say thank you. Vincent blinked. Russell scoffed. Excuse me. You did something for us, I continued. You showed us who we never want to be. You stripped away the illusion that we needed people like you to validate our worth. And you made one mistake, the kind you can't claw back, no matter how many clinics you build or politicians you fund. Vincent's mouth twitched. Which is, you underestimated quiet people. Janie stepped forward now, her voice calm, but sharper than mine. You treated me like a placeholder, she said to Russell. A naive little girl with a trust fund and no spine. But what you forgot, or maybe never knew, is that I wasn't just raised by my brother. I was built by him. Every single time I fell, he was the one who stood me up. And now, thanks to you, I'll never fall again. Russell opened his mouth to speak, but there was nothing left to say. We didn't gloat. We didn't throw files in their faces or demand groveling. Their legacy was already collapsing around them. The audits, the media coverage, the sudden freezing of their accounts by federal compliance. They were going to lose everything. Not because we yelled louder. Because we hit where it hurt, credibility. And they did the rest themselves. So we left. Just like that. And something strange happened on the drive home. For the first time in a long time, we laughed. Not out of madness or pain, but relief. That quiet kind of laughter that comes from realizing you survived something ugly and made it out stronger. A week later, Macy moved out. No drama. No apologies. Just a folded note on the kitchen counter that said, I never deserved you. I hope you find someone who sees you before they lose you. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I helped Janie file the paperwork to fully separate her trust and transfer the remaining oversight to a nonprofit she'd dreamed of building back in college, a mental health fund for girls from broken homes. We named it after our mother, the one who didn't make it, but gave us everything she could before she left. As for me, I went back to work. The little HVAC company where I'd always been just Howard. The quiet guy who fixed leaks and replaced filters and brought coffee for the front desk receptionist when she worked late. But something was different. I wasn't just surviving anymore. People saw it, in the way I stood, the way I smiled, the way I looked them in the eye without flinching. They didn't know what I'd been through. They didn't have to, because I knew. And that was enough. Sometimes, the real revenge isn't the fall of the empire. It's building something better in its place. Something quiet. Something whole. Something that lasts.